about that. And then I decided I wanted to switch my major, so I it was either going to be industrial and systems engineering or computer science engineering. And really what it came down to was with industrial systems engineering, I could still take a lot of the computer science core classes, but I could graduate in one semester late rather than a whole year late. Plus, I find the stuff in industrial systems engineering interesting anyway. So that's why I chose engineering, and now I study industrial engineering on the data analytics track.
Very cool, very cool.
What do you think of that answer?
That sounds good. Yeah, I like that answer.
Okay.
It's a good answer. Sounds like what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to run through all of them? Or?
Yeah, because I think a lot of... Yeah, let's go through all of them.
Okay.
If you got time, are you
yeah,
pressed for time?
As long as you don't go past like noon by a lot, we'll probably be fine.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so what was the next question in order?
So
I don't have the new order.
Do you think what you've learned in school or what you've learned at student organizations or internships has been more important or valuable to your overall experience?
Yeah, so I'm one of those guys who like love to learn, but I don't like school.
Yeah.
I don't think like I think school optimizes for like test grades rather than actually learning.
Yeah.
So I take it upon myself to learn a lot. So I read at least one book every 10 days, like almost always nonfiction. So I learn a lot through, like I learn a lot about like what I'm interested, like just personally.
Yeah.
And then when I actually learned the most was, I knew just enough Python to the interview questions. So a lot of my like technical job, and like working on projects actually was so much more like taking software 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Because those are such structured projects with an outline and rubric and everything, so you know basically what it's going to look like. But when you make your own software, you need to design what it needs to do, like who's it's for,
Yeah.
all that stuff. So I think I learned the most from my books, from work, and things like hackathons and startup weekends, when it's actually a practical experience.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a good answer. And then next was, what advice do you have to best prepare for the interview and recruitment process?
Yeah, so I've only had one internship before, but this second summer, I applied to like almost 100 places and got interviews at like more than 25. So I've done I've got interviews down to a science, I feel like, just from like sheer experience alone.
Yeah.
But what I recommend, like people who are like interviewing for either entry level or internship positions, is to like definitely do your research about the company beforehand, like figure out what you want from a workplace, and then like see how it checks those boxes for you. So some of the things that I look for, or actually this is a horrible example because it's so opposite. Actually, I'm not going to say it in the video, but one of my friends last semester, when he got rejected from his job at Nationwide that he wanted, I told him, like, don't worry, dude, like, Nationwide is where I'd go if I wanted the life sucked out of me. And then here I am.
That's funny.
But yeah, what I recommend to people who are like going into the interview process is like understand like what you're looking for out of companies. Like see, like if you want, like one of the things that I was looking for this summer was to like be in a city center, because my last internship was in a suburb.
Yeah.
So I wanted to work downtown somewhere. So that was one of the things that like drew me to Nationwide.
Yeah.
Yeah, so figure out like what you want for the company and how that from a company and how that like checks your boxes. I always ask about like what the team's like.
Yeah.
And then so what I do is have the notes about the company, like some check bullets
Yeah.
on the top saying like about this company. And then I say why this company and prepare those answers. And then I say why this specific role and then prepare those answers. And then prepare at least like 4 questions,
Yeah.
like 4 to 5 or 5 to 6 questions for the interviewers, because a lot of the times if you only make like 2 questions, like prepare 2, like you got to prepare some, but if you prepare a little amount, then there's chances are they'll answer it in the interview, like like when they give you a chance to ask a question, like the questions you prepared are already answered. So prepare like as many as you can, and don't be afraid to not get through all of them.
Yeah. Totally. All right. Number 4 was, what was the interview process at Nationwide like? How did you apply? How many interviews were there? What kind of questions did they ask?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when I applied to Nationwide, so first of all, I applied to Nationwide on Handshake, which is for people who's not from OSU. It's like the job posting board for OSU students.
Yeah.
So I applied through there, and then I visited them at the career fair, at the engineering career fair. I spoke to them, and they're like, yeah, we're only hiring for software developers. Yeah, I don't know anything about your role. Like basically, see you later.
Yeah.
Okay. And then a couple weeks later, I got an email from a recruiter at Nationwide saying, like asking what my availability is for an interview, like the next week.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm available for like at these times, like if it's a phone interview, and available at this like 2 times if it's on site, because it didn't even tell me when it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a on site interview, so I'm like, okay, then this day works for me. So there wasn't a phone. Usually there's like a phone screen beforehand, before there's an on site interview, but they just had one interview day on site, and then there were 2 technical interviews, both with the same guy, and then I forget what it's called. Do you know, Eamon, the part of the interview where it's like the personality thing, where like they tell me about a time when, the situational interview, that's it. There are 2 technical interviews and a situational interview. And then now you ask me to elaborate on the technical interview.
Okay. Can you elaborate on like a technical interview? Like what actually goes into that? And what do they ask of you?
So there were 2 parts. So I had no idea for Nationwide. They just sat me down. So since it was a data science position, I actually studied for like different machine learning algorithms and stuff. But it turned out the technical interview was a lot more like Linux command line and Python and stuff, which is stuff that I did in my previous internship. But the Linux command line is a lot of like just cheat sheet things. Like you need to know what the
syntax,
like command for new file and that kind of stuff is. So I actually thought that the technical interview went pretty poorly, because he's like, open. He's like, okay, like we just logged into the I'm like, okay, I can do that. It's like CD, and like you just do ls and see like what kind of folders are in there, and then you got to pick one by doing like CD and all that stuff. And he's like, okay, nice. And then open up this one. So I'm like, okay, I remember the command for open it. So I opened that file, and then it was just like 100 lines of like Python code on like the Linux command line, or on the Linux like black screen white text thing. So he's like, what does this program do? I'm like, well, so the thing was actually like what it did was basically like it aggregated data. It cleaned it collected data and then like formatted it, and then it's basically like relevant to like what data scientists have to do, and exactly what I did at my job as a data engineer. But yeah, he basically asked overall, what does this thing do? And then he asked me like what command or what line ran first. So like obviously the main function runs first, and then the second one is the first method that's called. So it was like, it wasn't very organized. It just skipped around everywhere. So like it was pretty easy, but it wasn't like obvious. Yeah. So then he had me make a new file, a new Python script to see if I do Python, but I forgot the command for make a new file. So I'm like, because it's really simple. It's pretty like fundamental to know how to make a new file. So I just forgot that new file is VIM and then the file name, which isn't obvious. And that's something I told him, like, this would be like on my cheat sheet. I've got my Linux command line cheat sheet when I need it. And he's like, yeah, dude, I understand. So then I made that, and then it was super simple. It was like make a file that just says welcome and then takes an input of your name. I'm like, dude, that's so easy. So I did that, and then he's like, okay, now make it so it says welcome your first name and your last name. I'm like, okay, that's pretty simple too. And he's like, okay, now just make a function that you pass the first name, last name in as parameters. Okay, I can do that too. So that was pretty easy as far as technical interviews go.
Okay.
We ran out of time, so I did the SQL part, and I didn't like nail the SQL thing because like SQL.
Yeah, structure.
But yeah, there's no big deal because like I had already worked with SQL, and SQL is one of those things that if you don't know it, because they don't teach you SQL in like computer science classes until like your third year, or like second semester, second year. So if you have an interview beforehand, SQL is one of those things that's really simple to just look up, practice SQL online, and you got tons of ways to learn it. Yeah, so that was that, and then they just asked me the normal, like tell me about a time when kind of things. In the situational interview, there was a guy who interviewed me for my technical thing, and then like the office manager or whatever, and then some other associate in there. But yeah, that was pretty straightforward. Situational interview.
All right. Yeah, so that one maybe more concise when we actually do it, but it was good. That was a good answer.
Yeah.
I like that details. So then 5 was, what advice do you have for the day-to-day operations once a person lands an important internship or job?
Yeah, so once you get a job, I think, like once you get a job, you can't just be complacent. Like you have to be like eager to learn and like be enthusiastic. I think for your first internship, like the number one thing that they're looking for is enthusiasm. See if you actually care about this thing, and like if it's going to be worth their time. So yeah, just be enthusiastic. Like keep trying to learn. Yeah, talk to people. See like if it's a good fit for full time, or if it's something like figure out what you like and don't like about it. And then one like short piece of advice that I started doing too late, but I'm really glad I started doing it, was just write down like what you did that day, like every day at the end of the day.
Okay.
Just say like a couple things, like for when you try to put this in your resume and get your key bullet points about like what you did and like why that experience was helpful. It's helpful to just to keep track of what you do every day and then figure out what the big things were so you don't forget.
I like that. Yeah, that's good. I'm actually starting one this summer, but it's kind of like
Yeah, I saw that. It's really cool. Infoparity.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
pretty.
It's just I knew people. It wasn't because I'm like that skilled or anything.
Mhm.
But yeah, like writing things down and enthusiasm is actually pretty helpful for me as a person who doesn't have all the databases down and like knows how to code in every language. I wouldn't like actually be that useful, so that's good.
Yeah.
What are some of the tricks or hacks you leverage to land such a wide variety of internships? Maybe I should leave out wide variety to land your.
Yeah, it's not that variety, but yeah. So I guess you could say like tricks or hacks you leverage to land a internship like outside of your major.
Yeah.
Like usually this thing's for like computer science engineers, or especially data engineering is for usually people who study computer science.
Yeah.
But yeah, the tricks or hacks that I used was so there's two. So one big thing is like I always try to figure out like how if you want to get into software, always just try to have some projects going on.
Yeah.
One of the things I do on the side is I'm a third-party Amazon seller, so a lot of the software that I make myself, a lot of that job can be automated, like the product research and stuff. So like a lot of the job was to like go through a list of products and see which ones are profitable and which ones aren't. So I made some software that just automatically loads the page and grabs like the title and grabs the price and like estimates all the fees and like what the profit will be after everything. So that's one of the things on my resume that people always ask about is like oh, that's really cool that you made some software outside of class that's actually useful to somebody. So that's some advice that I give to someone who's trying to do something technical. And then advice for anybody is to really like leverage LinkedIn. Like people are really eager to help college students who are like putting in the effort and who are actually interested in like learning about stuff after school. Like I'm not a big part of their life. So when you ask them about their work and what they like about it and what they like what they wish they know and all that kind of stuff, people are usually pretty responsive to that. So there's some article that I can link to when we actually do the interview by one of my friends, Alex Lacey, who
sounds familiar.
At Facebook, even though he studies biomechanical engineering. Just by he was in BDA, but he graduated 2 years ago, I think.
Okay.
But he has an article that I really like that says basically how to get people to help you get a job.
Sounds interesting. How to get people to help you get a job.
Let me see how.
Maybe we would like link that when this is posted on the 500 Firms website. Like under the video or something in the description. Maybe we could like
link strangers to help you get a job.
Like I don't know how you link it now.
Yeah,
but
Alex Lacey. Yeah, so that's my advice.
Did he write it?
Is looking for a job. Here's how to convince strangers to help you get one. The 7-step process I used to get 40 referrals.
Wow.
So the guy, he does well with it. He's working at Microsoft now as a project manager, which is usually one of those jobs that are for like people who graduate from like
that's
UPenn and
for Fisher.
Stanford.
I'm in the I'm in the honors program for freshmen, and they like had a guy come, like a software salesman at Microsoft, but he's like top of the line. He makes like $800K a year, and he was like,
Wow.
"Yeah, for recruiting and internships, we usually don't look at Fisher. We look at like Harvard MBAs." I was like, "Okay, thanks for coming." Just roast us. Yeah, it was funny.
Roast you on your own turf.
Yeah, like okay, like and he was a Fisher alumni too. Like all the speakers were Fisher alums, so.
Huh.
So you just
That's funny.
All right. And then the last one, do you have any mantras, principles, or quotes that influence how you live, work, or lead?
Yeah, so I read a lot about like happiness and just like life in general.
Yeah.
One of the, or I guess two quotes that I like to live by is like take it for what it's worth. I think that's super like fundamental, but it's really helpful is to just like take things for what they are. If you can't do something about it, then don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Like don't be so attached to things. And then the other thing, I guess these are both kind of like pessimistic, but the other one is you get what you tolerate. So like you get what you tolerate means to me like if you aren't happy with something, like for example, if you're not happy with like your weight or something, like you are tolerating that. I guess I'm not going to use this as a real example because that might be offensive to some people, but like when you want something, like if you don't have what you want, it's not because so you get what you tolerate means to me that like you can go for what you want, and if what you want is not what you have, that means that like you don't actually want it that much.
Yeah.
Like if you wanted it that bad, then you'd be doing everything that you could to be getting that.
Yeah.
So if you're tolerating mediocrity, then that's what you're going to get. So that's what
I like that.
But I don't know if that's good one. I might just say the first one.
Okay.
What do you think, Amy?
I like the first one a lot.
I'll do the first one.
The second one is good, but it might be offensive to people who like I don't know, have mistalent stuff. To be like, I'm trying. Man.
Yeah. Plus, what's this guy saying? He works at an insurance company. Like, what do you mean fight mediocrity?
I mean, Nationwide's pretty cool. It's like, I mean, I grew up around here, so it's like the big dog. But
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
I think it's cool that they're the Blue Jackets are in the running. That's probably the most exciting thing about Nationwide to me.
Eastern Conference semis, yeah.
Mhm.
Nationwide Arena. They lost last night, though. I was watching.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Makes for a better game, 2-2.
Yeah, no. Yeah, more interesting for sure. All right, you want to run it back? Slightly
yeah,
harder?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Let's try to get this within 20 minutes.